The heat was already pressing down on the city, the kind that makes the asphalt soft and the air taste like exhaust. It was only 9 in the morning, but my uniform was already starting to stick to my back. The Kevlar vest felt like a hot plate, strapped to my chest. It was Tuesday, which somehow felt worse than Monday. Monday has the excuse of being the start of the week. Tuesday is just another day to get through. My partner Mike was driving. He was humming some tune from the radio, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. Mike could find a silver lining. In a mud puddle, I was just tired. Tired in my bones. We'd had a rough few weeks. A string of domestic calls that leave a bad taste in your mouth. A robbery that went sideways. And the usual parade of desperation and bad choices that fills up a cop's day. I hadn't been sleeping right. My wife Sarah said I was grinding. My teeth again. She'd put her hand on my jaw at night, trying to get me to relax. It never worked. Dispatch to 7 and Dame 12. The radio crackled. I grabbed the mic. 7 and Dame 12. Go ahead. We've got a call for a disturbance at the main entrance of the county courthouse. Caller reports a male, agitated, trying to gain access to a restricted area. No weapons seen, but he's causing a scene. 10-4. We're 5 minutes out, I said, and clipped the mic back. Mike shot me a look. Courthouse shenanigans. Joy. It's probably just some guy who's unhappy with a verdict, I grumbled, my hand resting on my holster. It was a habit, a comforting weight. Let's just get it handled. The courthouse was its usual brand of organized chaos. Lawyers in suits hurried up the wide stone steps, clients trailing nervously behind them. People smoked on the sidewalk, their faces etched with worry. The whole place smelled of stale coffee, cheap perfume, and anxiety. We pulled up to the curb and I saw him immediately. He was standing near the side entrance, the one used by judges and court personnel. A bailiff, a young guy named Henderson, was trying to talk to him, holding his hands up in a placating way. The man wasn't having it. He was waving his arms, his voice a low, angry rumble I could hear even from the car. I took him in with a single glance, the way you learn to do, the way you have to do. He was maybe in his late 50s, early 60s, but he looked rough. His clothes were the first thing I noticed. A pair of old, faded jeans with a smudge of what looked like dirt on the knee, a simple gray t-shirt that was a little stretched out at the collar, scuffed up work boots. He had a few days' worth of silver stubble on his cheeks, and his gray hair was a mess. Sticking up in different directions like he'd been running his hands through it all morning, he looked out of place. He looked like trouble. We fit the description. Agitated male. Stay with the car. I'll handle this, I said to Mike, already opening my door. The heat hit me like a wall. My mind was already working, putting the pieces together. Disgruntled defendant. Maybe a guy whose house was being foreclosed on. Maybe someone with a grudge against a judge. The courthouse attracted them like moths to a flame. I'd seen it 100 times. They get desperate. They get loud. Sometimes they get violent. My job was to stop it before it got to that point. My job was to be the wall. I walked towards him with purpose. Henderson, the young bailiff, looked relieved to see me. Officer, thanks, he said, his voice a little shaky. This guy, he won't listen. He's insisting he needs to get through this door and he won't show me any ID. I nodded, my eyes locked on the man. I stepped between him and Henderson, creating space. I made myself a little bigger, puffing my chest out. It's a cop thing, a way of saying I'm in charge now, sir, I said, my voice firm and low. I need you to calm down. The man turned his sharp blue eyes on me. They weren't wild or crazy like I expected. They were intense, focused, annoyed. I am calm, he said, his voice clipped. I'm just trying to get to my office, and this young man won't let me pass. This is a restricted entrance, sir, I said. My patient's already wearing thin. The sun was beating on the back of my neck. I just wanted this over with. It's for authorized personnel only. You need to use the main entrance and go through. Security like everyone else? He let out a short, frustrated sigh. I'm aware of the protocol, officer. I seem to have forgotten my identification this morning. It's an honest mistake. Now, if you'll just let me. We took a step towards the door. That was it. That was the line. In my head, alarms went off. Non-compliant, trying to breach. A secure area. All the training, all the bad experiences, they all came rushing to the front of my mind. I saw the worst-case scenario. I saw a headline. I saw a threat. I moved without thinking. I put my hand flat on his chest and shoved him back. It wasn't a gentle push. It was hard, meant to stop him in his tracks. He stumbled back a step, surprise flashing across his face. I said, "Step back," I barked, my voice louder now, full of authority. "Put your hands where I can see them." His face hardened. The annoyance turned into a slow-burning anger. "Officer, you are making a serious mistake." "Yeah, I've heard that one before," I muttered, stepping closer to him. "Turn around." Hands on the wall. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me with those piercing blue eyes. There was something in his look. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. It threw me for a second, but the adrenaline was pumping too hard. He was refusing a direct, lawful order. It's resisting. I grabbed his arm. He was wiry, but stronger than he looked. He tried to pull away. "Don't fight me," I yelled, using the anger to fuel my actions. "You want to do this the hard way?" I twisted his arm behind his back, pushing him forward. He grunted in pain as his body hit the brick wall of the courthouse with a dull thud. His cheek was pressed against the rough surface. I had his left arm pinned, and I was reaching for his right one to get the cuffs on. "What is your name, officer?" he asked, his voice strained but steady. It was unnervingly calm. "You're not the one asking questions right now," I grunted, fumbling for my handcuffs. The metal was hot from the sun. What in the Sam Hill is going on here? The voice was deep, gravelly, and full of command. I glanced over my shoulder. It was Sergeant Miller, the head of courthouse security. He was a big man, a former Marine with a flat-top haircut and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He was one of the few people on the force who everyone, from rookies to the chief, respected without question. He was looking at me, and at the man I had pinned against the wall. His expression was unreadable. "Sergeant," I said, trying to sound in control, this individual was causing a disturbance, trying to force his way into a restricted area. He's being uncooperative. Miller walked closer, his heavy boots making a slow, deliberate sound on the pavement. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the man I was holding. His face, which was usually a stern mask, softened with something that looked like concern. "Judge," Miller said, his voice suddenly losing its hard edge. "Are you all right?" The word hung in the hot, still air. "Judge." My blood went cold. Felt like I'd been dunked in a tank of ice water. My hands, which had been so sure and strong a second ago, suddenly felt weak and clumsy. Loosened my grip on the man's arm. He slowly turned his head, his cheek red and scraped from the brick. He looked at Sergeant Miller. "I'm fine, Frank," he said, his voice still steady. He then looked back at me. The disappointment in his eyes was so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Just a misunderstanding. I let go of him completely, stepping back as if the wall he'd been pressed against was suddenly electrified. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My mouth was dry. The man, the judge, brushed himself off. He adjusted his stretched-out t-shirt and ran a hand through his messy hair. He looked at the dirt smudge on his jeans and sighed again, a completely different kind of sigh this time. It was the sigh of a man who was just tired of the way things were. Sergeant Miller was staring at me. His face was granite again, but this time it was aimed directly at me. He didn't have to say a word. I could feel the heat of his disapproval. "From 10 feet away, officer," the judge said, turning to face me fully. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening. That would have been easier to handle. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, and that made it 1,000 times worse. "What's your name?" I swallowed, but my throat was a dessert. "Officer." "Officer Danny Miller," I stammered. "Wait, Miller." My brain wasn't working. "Sorry, Officer Danny Ryan." He nodded slowly. "Officer Ryan," said my name like he was tasting it, trying to figure it out. "Think you and I need to have a talk." "In my chambers?" "Frank, could you please escort the officer?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sergeant Miller said, the words sharp and final. Your Honor, the words echoed in my head as I stood there, frozen on the hot pavement. Mike was out of the car now, his face a mask of confusion and dawning horror as he figured out what had just happened. The young bailiff Henderson looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. I had just roughed up and tried to arrest Judge Arthur Morrison. Not just any judge, the presiding judge of the entire county, the man in charge of it all. The man who signed off on the warrants we served, who sentenced the people we arrested, who held the entire criminal justice system of our small city in his hands. And I had just slammed him against his own courthouse wall. The walk to his chambers was the longest walk of my life. It felt like walking to my own execution. Sergeant Miller walked behind me, his silence a heavy cloak of judgment. Every person we passed in the hallway seemed to know. The whispers followed me like a cloud of flies. I could feel their eyes on my back. My face was burning with shame. I kept my gaze fixed on the floor, on the scuffed linoleum tiles, counting them one by one. The door to his chambers was heavy, dark wood. It looked like the door to the principal's office when you were a kid, but 100 times more terrifying. Miller opened it and gestured for me to go inside. He didn't follow, just closed the door behind me, the soft click of the latch sounding like a cell door locking. The room was not what I expected, was filled with books, floored ceiling, shelves packed with thick, leather-bound volumes. There was a large, mahogany desk, but it was surprisingly cluttered. Stacks of files, a half-empty coffee mug, a picture of a smiling woman and 2 kids. On the windowsill there were several small pots with little green seedlings sprouting from the soil. The room smelled of old paper, leather, and fresh dirt. Judge Morrison was standing by the window, his back to me. He was looking out at the city. I was at the community garden this morning, he said, his voice still quiet. Didn't turn around. Over on Elm Street. We're putting in a new section for tomatoes. I was running late. Didn't have time to go home and change. I just wanted to grab a file from my desk before my first hearing. Forgot my ID card on the dresser. That's all. He laid out the simple, innocent facts of his morning, and with each word, the pit in my stomach grew deeper. I had taken that simple, innocent series of events and twisted it into something ugly and threatening. Your Honor, I started, my voice cracking. I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. He finally turned to face me. He had taken a handkerchief from his pocket and was dabbing at the scrape on his cheek. You do know what to say, Officer Ryan? You've already said it. Turn around. Hands on the wall. Don't fight me. You're not the one. Asking questions right now? He repeated my own words back to me. And hearing them in his calm, measured tone made them sound monstrous. They weren't the words of a peacekeeper, or the words of a bully. My eyes welled up. I was a 34-year-old cop, a husband, a father, and I felt like a little boy about to cry in front of the whole world. I stammered, trying to explain, trying to justify the unjustifiable. The call, agitated mail, your clothes, the way you were talking to the bailiff. I put it all together and got the wrong answer. I saw a threat that wasn't there. I saw what you expected to see, he said, walking slowly towards his desk. He sat down in his large leather chair, which squeaked under his weight. He motioned for me to sit in the chair opposite him. Right. It felt like my legs were made of lead, but I managed to move and sit down. Tell me, officer, he said, leaning forward and folding his hands on the desk. How long have you been on the force? 8 years, Your Honor. 8 years, he repeated, nodding. And in those 8 years, how many times have you been right? How many times have you seen a situation like that, and your gut, your training, told you it was trouble, and it turned out to be trouble? A lot, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Most of the time, I believe you, he said. I see the results of your work in my courtroom every single day. I see the people you bring in. I read your reports. I know the world. You operate in, it's not a pretty one. It's a world that can make a man hard. It can make him see threats everywhere. It can make him forget to look for the person and only see the potential perpetrator. He looked at the picture on his desk, the one of his family. I have a son, he said softly. He's in college. He has long hair, wears ripped jeans and old band t-shirts. He drives a beat-up car. If you saw him on the street, what would you see, Officer Ryan? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't have an answer. The truth was, I didn't know what I would see. 5 minutes ago, I would have had a quick, easy, probably wrong answer. I understand you have a difficult job, the judge continued, his eyes meeting mine again. I understand the pressure, the danger. But what happened out there? That wasn't about pressure. That wasn't about danger. That was about a failure to see. You looked at me, and you didn't see a man. You saw a stereotype, a problem to be solved. Your solution was force. I couldn't speak, just nodded, shame washing over me in waves. He was right, always completely right. My own dad had been a cop. He was from a different era, a different kind of cop. He walked a beat in our neighborhood. He knew everyone's name. He knew their kids, their dogs, their troubles. He solved more problems with a conversation on a front porch than I ever had with a pair of handcuffs. He used to tell me, Danny, the uniform doesn't make you powerful. It makes you responsible. Your job isn't to win fights. It's to make sure they never have to start. I had wanted to be like him, but somewhere along the line, the stress and the cynicism had chipped away at that ideal. I had become the kind of cop he always warned me about. I could have you suspended, Judge Morrison said, his voice flat. I could file a formal complaint that would follow you for the rest of your career. I could make a few calls and have you on desk duty for the foreseeable future, reviewing paperwork until your eyes glaze over. In many ways, that would be the easiest thing to do. I held my breath, waiting for the axe to fall. But I don't think that would solve anything, he said, leaning back in his chair. It wouldn't fix what's wrong. It wouldn't help you, and it wouldn't help the next person you encounter. On a bad day? He paused, looking at me thoughtfully. It was the first time I felt like he was seeing me, Danny Ryan, and not just the uniform I was wearing. So here is what's going to happen, he said. For the next 2 weeks, you are being reassigned. You'll report here to my courtroom. You will not carry a weapon. You will not wear your uniform. You will wear a suit and tie. And you will sit in the back of my courtroom, and you will watch. You will listen. You will not speak. You will simply observe. I want you to see what happens after you put the cuffs on. I want you to see these people not as perps, but as people. People with families, with stories, with fears. People whose lives are hanging in the balance based on the decisions we make. Your shift is my shift. When court is in session, you are here. Is that understood? I was so stunned. All I could do was nod. Yes, Your Honor. Perfectly. Good. Your reassignment begins tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. And Officer Ryan? Yes, Your Honor. Wear a different tie each day. It shows you're paying attention to the details. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth before disappearing. You're dismissed. Stood up, my legs still shaky. Thank you, Your Honor. He just nodded, already picking up a file from his desk, his attention moving on. I turned and walked out of the room, closing the heavy door behind me. The next 2 weeks were the strangest, hardest, and most important of my life. The first day, I showed up in my only suit, the one I got married in. It was a little tight. I felt exposed without my vest, without the weight of my gun on my hip. I felt like a fraud. I sat in the back row of the public gallery. Mike had called me the night before. He had told me the whole department was buzzing. Some guys were laughing, making jokes. Others were just shaking their heads. Mike just said, "You ride it out, man. Just ride it out." Judge Morrison came in, wearing his black robe. He looked completely different. He was no longer the messy guy in old jeans. He was an imposing figure of authority. He sat down at the bench, looked out over the courtroom, and his eyes briefly met mine. There was no anger, no judgment, just a quiet expectation. And then the day began, and I started to see. I saw a young woman, no older than 20, charged with shoplifting baby formula. She cried silently as her public defender explained that she'd lost her job and had no other way to feed her child. I'd probably arrested a dozen kids like her. To me, they were just shoplifters, a case number. But sitting there, I saw the terror in her eyes. I saw a mother. Judge Morrison didn't send her to jail. He sentenced her to community service at a women's shelter and connected her with social services to help her find a job and get food assistance. I saw an old man, his hands trembling from a lifetime of hard labor, fighting an eviction notice. He'd lived in the same apartment for 40 years. A new landlord had doubled his rent. He had nowhere else to go. I thought about all the eviction notices I'd served. Just another piece of paper, another task to check off. I never thought about the person on the other side of the door. Judge Morrison spent nearly an hour on the case, working out a payment plan and a stay of eviction with the landlord's lawyer, treating the old man's dignity as if it were the most important thing in the room. Day after day, I watched. I listened. I saw the endless river of human struggle that flowed through that courtroom. Drug addiction, mental illness, poverty, bad luck, and just plain stupid mistakes. Of course, there were bad people too. Violent people who had done terrible things. They were the minority. Most of them were just broken. People who had gotten lost along the way. I saw the way Judge Morrison spoke to them. It was firm, but he was never demeaning. It was fair. He listened to their stories. He looked them in the eye, saw them. He saw the person, not just the file in front of him. He was doing what my dad had always talked about. He was being responsible. During a recess one afternoon in the second week, he called me up to the bench. The courtroom was empty. "What have you learned, Officer Ryan?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly in the big room. "I've learned." I started searching for the right words. "I've learned that I've been looking at the world through a keyhole. I only ever saw a tiny piece of the story. The beginning. The arrest. I never saw the rest." He nodded. "It's a hard thing, to try and see the whole picture. We all only get a piece of it. The trick is to remember that the other pieces exist, even when you can't see them." He pointed to the seal of the state on the wall behind him. That symbol isn't just about laws and punishment. It's supposed to be about balance, justice, and justice requires understanding. It requires empathy. You can't have justice without empathy, officer. You just have rules. I went home that night and I talked to Sarah for the first time. In years, I really talked to her. I told her everything. It's about the incident with the judge, about the shame, about what I was seeing in the courtroom. I told her I felt like I had lost my way, that I wasn't the man I wanted to be, or the cop my dad would have been proud of. She listened, holding my hand. When I was done, she had tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Danny," she said. "Not for what you did, but for seeing it, for being willing to change." The 2 weeks ended. I put my uniform back on. It felt different. It didn't feel like armor anymore. It felt like a responsibility, a heavy one. My first day back on patrol, Mike was quiet. He was watching me, I could tell, waiting to see if I was different. We got a call. A teenager spray painting graffiti on the side of a convenience store. A year ago, I would have rolled up hot, yelled, thrown him in the back of the car and been done with it in 5 minutes. This time, I was different. I got out of the car and walked over to the kid. He was scrawny, with terrified eyes. I didn't yell. I just asked him his name. I asked him what he was painting. He mumbled something. I asked him to show me. It was a name, his brother's. "He died last month," the kid said, his voice thick. "It's his birthday today." My heart ached. I looked at the wall. It wasn't just graffiti. It was a memorial. Clumsy, illegal, but heartfelt memorial. I took the kid over to the store owner. It's an old man named Mr. Kim. I explained the situation. Mr. Kim looked at the kid, then at the wall, then back at the kid. He sighed. "You clean this wall, Mr. Kim," told the boy. "You clean it spotless, then you come work for me on Saturdays for 1 month. Stocking shelves, no pay. To pay for the paint to fix it." The kid nodded eagerly, relief flooding his face. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." I drove the boy home. On the way, I told him about a youth center that had an art program, a place where he could paint on big canvases instead of brick walls. When I got back to the car, Mike was just looking at me. What? I asked. My dad would have liked that, he said quietly. That's all. A few months later, I was back at the courthouse to testify in a case. As I was leaving, I saw Judge Morrison walking down the hallway. He wasn't in his robes, just a simple suit and tie. Saw me, and he stopped. I wasn't sure what to say, Your Honor. I nodded. He nodded back. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. Officer Ryan, he said, good to see you.
Hey.
Are those tomatoes doing over on Elm Street? I wouldn't know, sir, I said. You should stop by sometime, he said. It's good to get your hands in the dirt. It reminds you that things can grow, even in hard ground. He walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt the weight of my vest, not as a burden, but as a promise to see the whole person, a promise to remember that justice, real justice, starts with a little bit of empathy. And sometimes it grows in the most unexpected places.